Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Okay, welcome to this lecture. The topic we are going to cover today is on project monitoring and a little bit on control. We will actually have two lectures on this topic. The lecture today will be a more general one on monitoring and its requirements, and the next lecture will be on an earned value system which we will be using for getting more details on monitoring. So for this lecture, the outline is as follows. We will discuss the need for monitoring and control, okay, and then we will look at some standardized processes which are defined in the BIS standard for monitoring and control. We will look at the flow charts, the activities, we will get a broader perspective on it, and then we will get into specifics like when we do monitoring, what is the frequency we need to monitor, what are the levels of monitoring. This will coincide with the levels of planning. We will do a little bit of discussion on that, and then we get into a lot of detail on how do we actually measure work progress, and an important issue here is measuring what we call percentage complete. So how do we measure percentage complete of an activity? Okay, so these are the topics which we are going to cover, and finally we will talk about, we'll give a couple of examples to show how we are going to do this percentage complete measurement and some of the problems associated with this percentage complete measurement. So you might remember this from the first lecture where we said a lot of what we do is in the cycle of plan, monitor and control, and until now we have been mostly focusing on the planning side. So we have been focusing on how we plan and do what all the lectures so far has been focused on planning and various aspects of planning. And it is only in the next few lectures, actually couple of lectures, we will be talking about monitoring. I will touch upon control, a little bit on control in this lecture, but we will see that we cannot do too much of theory as far as control is concerned, and it is more an applied area, and we will discuss why. Now when we talk about this plan, monitoring and control, or even planning specifically, there is this quotation which I think is very interesting. It's by Eisenhower. And he says, in preparing for battle, I have always found that plans are useless, okay, but planning is indispensable. Now give it some thought. What does this mean? He says plans are useless, but planning is indispensable. So what people interpret it as, as you know, Eisenhower was involved, was one of the generals in the war, and when he says plans are useless, what he says is what you actually plan to do never happens. Okay, you will have to make changes, you will have to adapt, you will have to be able to monitor what's happening and make changes as you go along. But the process of planning, getting the team together, discussing things, getting everybody's ideas, that is the process of planning. Planning as such is indispensable. So when we get into the plan, monitor and control cycle, it will be easy to see that, or we'll kind of illustrate that the plan which we make is not going to work the way we originally envisioned it. So we have to keep monitoring the plan and applying control so that our project tries to stay to the original objectives. We might not follow exactly the same path as we planned originally, but we need to monitor and control to get this going. Let me kind of illustrate this with an example. Okay, this is a very simple example. Let me say the objective is to travel from the IIT Madras to Chennai Central, and you have 40 minutes to do it. You have a train to catch and you want to travel from IIT Madras to Chennai Central Station. Now obviously you have to develop a plan. What would you do to plan? Think about it. Today with the technology, what you would probably do is develop a route like this on your Google map. And you can see IIT is here, and okay, IIT is here, and Google has given me three options. Okay, you can see some of the options are in gray. but there is one option which is highlighted which takes 31 minutes is what I am choosing. There is actually a second option at 31 minutes too, and a third option which takes less time, 29 minutes, but for many reasons, based on being a Chennai resident, I am deciding to take the 31 minute along the Marina Beach, because I probably like to drive along the beach, or there are other reasons for which, but it gets me to Chennai Central within my stipulated time frame. So I am going to choose this as my option. Now my plan from here says 31 minutes. Okay, I have a planned duration of 31 minutes, and I am deciding my mode of transport will be an auto, taxi or car, so that my speed is as Google has planned it, and not a public transport system which might be a different plan with a different time slot. Now, so this is my plan, and now I start my travel. Okay, so I start my travel here. Will I reach, will everything go according to plan and I reach exactly in 31 minutes? It is very unlikely. Okay, so as I am going on as I am going on my route, I have to monitor my progress, right? You will have to monitor to see how you are doing. So we have different milestones on the way. So I can have a variety of milestones which I actually pass, and at each of the milestones I can see am I keeping to my plan or am I not keeping to my plan. So for example, in this route I see there is a heavy traffic area here, it is marked in red. Okay, so I have to check. So obviously today what with my GPS system, it will tell me how much time is remaining and things like that. So it is monitoring my activity and telling me if I am keeping to plan or not, or I can use the details from what Google tells me or Google Maps tells me to see if I am going to keep to plan or not. Now I will certainly check this constantly till I reach the station. Okay, so when I will be monitoring, so if you want to answer the questions why, how and when, I will certainly be monitoring to make sure that I do not fall behind, and I will make it to the station within the stipulated time. In this particular case, I will certainly use my Google Map to keep monitoring my progress. And how frequently will I monitor? This is another very important question. Am I going to constantly look at the map and see every second am I keeping time or not? Probably not. I am going to probably look at it once, probably once every 10 minutes, or might be 7 to 8 minutes to see if things are going, and if things are going extremely well, I might not even look at it at all. I might have a feel that things are okay. So you will need to monitor, whereas is it likely that I will not monitor the progress at all? Is it likely that once I start from IIT, I will not look at the map till I reach Chennai Central? Might not be, especially if there are a few bottlenecks in the way. I will then certainly look and see when I am going to reach. What are the potential disruptions to the plan? Certainly if I have an open road, everything is predictable, there will be no disruptions, but as we know, that is not the case. There can be several disruptions, including it could be a minor accident on the way will back up traffic. There might be a road closure due to some event which can again change things. So there can be a lot of disruptions to the plan, and if there is a disruption, let us say I reach, you can see Santom is here, I reach Santom, and there is, and it's only, I have already spent 25 minutes. Okay, I have only 15 more minutes to get to Chennai Central. Now how would I establish some kind of control on this? Might be I can choose a different path, or I might have to go faster, or there might be, in this particular opinion, there doesn't seem to be any other strategy. I either have to choose a different path or go faster. So these are the control strategies for this particular situation. Okay, so this gives you an example of what we mean by plan, monitor and control in an everyday context. Now we use this situation with a very sophisticated tool like a Google Map available to us with GPS tracking, which is what most of us do today. Now imagine if there was no Google Map or no GPS to allow you to track continuously, what would you do? Just think about it, and might be if there are any questions on it, we can post it on the discussion forum. But think what you would do if the technology was not available. And that is in some ways where we are in construction, technology is starting to be available, but once we plan, the way we monitor and the way we kind of get monitoring information, the technology is only starting to develop. So if we get into this whole area of monitoring and we look at what is a formal way in which monitoring is to be done, there is this flowchart that is available as a part of the IS 15883, and you can see that we have several parts of the flowchart. Let me go through it in some amount of detail. So we assume that the plan is done. So you can see the time planning is done, the baseline, schedule, bar charts, all this which we have covered earlier is done. Okay, so this is the plan is done. We talked about this also, preparation of planning, resources, S-curve, project, WBS, all this is also done. And based on this, the site execution starts. Okay, execution of the site works is going on, and based on the site works, we get collected data from site. We get daily, weekly, monthly progress reports are coming from the site. Okay. Using these reports, we generate MIS reports. Using this data, we generate MIS reports. We update the schedule. Okay, we have actual versus revised for start and finish. We update the schedule. We have planned versus actual for resource deployment and productivity. We have planned versus actual for the S-curve and variance analysis. So all this information is monitoring information. Okay, that's coming from the data that's collected once the project starts. Okay, and based on this information, we compile a project status report and communicate the status report to the site to see if they should take any control action or what they should do. Now, this gives you a nice overview of how the planning kind of moves to a monitoring phase. Okay, the plan phase moves to a monitoring phase. Now, the key output from the planning phase is the baseline plan. So the term baseline plan is very important. So baseline plan, as we have defined here, is the initial approved plan to which deviations will be compared as the project proceeds. Without a baseline plan, there is no meaning because we don't have a benchmark to compare anything with. So the baseline forms the basis, and then it's only based on this baseline that monitoring is going to be done. And of course, if we have major changes in the project requirements as we progress, we can have baselines themselves changing, but that we need to agree to a change of baseline as we progress. Typically when we say monitoring, it is against a specific baseline. Now we can look at this in a different perspective. I think you might be familiar with this. We use this also in some of the earlier lectures where we are talking about planning and monitoring levels. We talked about having the master plan, the macro and the micro plan, and I just abstracted it to these three broad levels, and as we had seen in some lectures earlier, there are several other levels of planning can be done. Okay, so if we look at this broad issue, we can see there is at the master plan level, we can look at the planning outputs that are coming. You have major milestones, key resources, okay, and then at the macro plan level, we have activity completion, quantity targets. All this is coming at the macro plan level, okay, and then when we go to the micro plan, we have activity completion at the daily and weekly level, quantity location targets, detailed resource requirements is at the micro plan. So we really have looked at mostly, as I discussed before, in this class we are dealing with a macro plan. Okay, the network level planning is dealing with a macro plan. Now after we get into execution, okay, we are now going to look at data coming out of execution. As we saw in the earlier set of slides, okay, we got into execution and then data starts coming out of execution. So similarly here we get into execution and data starts coming out of execution. We have daily progress reports, okay, that come out of execution, and based on daily progress reports, there is again productivity measurement and improvement, and a lot of very detailed things can be done at the execution level. But from here we then go into, so this gives you data for micro planning, which then if any changes are required at the daily or weekly level, the micro plan is done and execution is adapted to the micro plan. And based on this, we also get the macro planning data coming. Okay, so this provides feedback back to our network to do various to update our network and do the network analysis. So this is primarily our focus. How do we update the network? What kind of information do we do in terms of network analysis, especially at the level of the macro plan? And we will also cover what we are doing here, just earned value measurements, the type of reports. All of these also become important, because when you go to the top higher management, this is how they would monitor the project. Okay, so the level at which we are doing is very important. So please recall that we are primarily focused, the network kind of analysis we do is at the macro planning level. When you go to a micro plan, it might be a spreadsheet, okay, because all you are doing is daily, weekly, very detailed planning. And the master plan can be a broad level milestone plan. Okay, so when we come back to look at this, another key issue here is at what frequency do I update? How frequently does execution kind of update the micro plan? How frequently should my macro plan be updated? These things become extremely important, and even in the process here, we talked about daily, weekly, monthly progress reports. Okay. So when we come to the frequency of update, and here please look at this, we are not talking about the frequency of update of any schedule, we are talking about the frequency of update of the macro schedule. So if we look at just the macro schedule, if we look at only the macro schedule here, am I going to update it on a daily level? That's going to be quite a challenge. Okay, because I cannot keep going back to my network and updating it at a daily level. So a lot of times we will see that macro schedules are updated based on the need for the project duration and the criticality of the project. Okay, so you can have a project duration of several years, in which case even a weekly update might not be necessary. It might be a bi-weekly or a monthly update. Depends on the criticality of the project. If there is something and you have to, the overhead you use to update, you need a lot of resources also to update the project. So if I am going to do a weekly update, that means the resources I deploy should be justified in, the cost of that should be justified based on the criticality of the project. There are certain projects, for example, which I would use a weekly update because the project duration is only a few months, and if I miss a couple of weeks, that means I lose a lot of information. So in some cases we might need weekly, in some cases it can be bi-weekly, in some cases monthly, and this will, like we have noted here, depends on the duration and criticality. Now the required level at which monitoring control can be done is, it's like we discussed, if it's too frequent, there is high overhead and no value. If it is infrequent, there is inadequate information to monitor and control. Okay, I discussed this point earlier, but basically we are saying, it seems that the more frequently I monitor, the better things are going to be, but you can use the trip example. Am I going to look at the GPS every few seconds? No, it's not. It's going to be too much of overburden for me. But I should have the right time when I am looking at it, so that I can monitor my progress and take control actions. So this would be critical in the way we are doing the monitoring cycle. When we come to what we find is, in a lot of cases, monitoring is done not based on planning requirements or monitoring requirements, but based on the billing cycle. A lot of companies will require the plan and the update of the plan to be submitted for payments. So you will find that schedules are updated only for bill generation and not for planning and monitoring. So this is really an issue. It's a practical issue. We will find that planning teams are, the company certainly, the site certainly needs cash flow to keep going, but the intent of doing the schedule update, if it's only to generate cash flow, it can compromise planning. And the last point, to a lot of times, the schedule update is only done based on contractual requirements. The contract says a certain time and they do it only based on the contractual requirements, but might not be what the plan requires. The plan might be more frequent, but because of a contractual need, it's done in that, in the as specified by the contract. Or even more importantly, sometimes the schedule is only maintained for delay analysis. So if something goes wrong with the project, then delay analysis is kind of a post-mortem of the project. And if you are maintaining a schedule only to kind of do an analysis of what went wrong later, then you are actually not using it for planning, and this is also not a very good primary reason to keep updating the schedule. So delay analysis also has specific frequency with which you keep updates, so that later on when you do an analysis of delays, you can find reasons at the correct level of detail. So again, to summarize the slide, we should really do updates based on a planning and monitoring requirement, and that can be weekly, bi-weekly or monthly, depending on the duration and criticality of the project.